or some of our
Just
usual
one
staff
moment.
who handle our technology side of the meetings are out, and we're just wanting to make sure we get all our ducks in a row. I'll also mention while we're checking on that.
We are here, tech
All right.
people, and we are live.
It looks like we're live.
Thank you, Megan. Megan is always here and helping and on standby. We're just down a little bit of capacity. So thanks for stepping in, Megan, and for working with us. All right. And I also just want to mention at the outset that I did invite some of our grant applicants to be available on standby. I've asked them to just watch the meeting on the YouTube feed, and then to the extent that you all have questions or want to hear more about some of these things, we have a lot of the applicants who are at least available to be brought into the meeting as needed. So I'll defer to y'all on whether or not that's something you'd like to do as we work through it. So with that, I'll stop talking and we'll get going. So you want to pull up our agenda, Eric?
Sir.
Just page down to the few pages there. One of the Justice Miskell, I'll let you convene us.
Well, I was going to say, this is my first committee meeting, and so I'm not sure the general order of how they usually go, but I am happy to facilitate it and whatever is needed, but I'm sure you all have done this many more times than I have, so I will allow you to present in the way that you planned, and then just let me know if you need me to be doing formal actions or whatever I'm supposed to be doing.
Sure, I appreciate that. Thank you, Justice Miskell. And so, of course, Judge Woolley and you are both new to the committee process, and so we'll work through it together. To the extent that you have any questions about our process, I'd love to answer them as we work through things. But we'll get started. And Eric, do you want to just to check the box? We'll take attendance.
Sure thing. All right. So for attendance, we have the Honorable Emily Miskell. And we have the Honorable James R. Woolley Jr.
Great. So we do have a quorum.
I saw, let me ask that. I saw there was a spot marked vacant. Is that because it's pending some sort of appointment to TIDC, or do we need to be recruiting another person?
So I'd flagged this for the chair. The third position on this committee was Judge Gravel from Williamson County, and he moved off of the commission shortly. He was on very briefly because he took a position in the Trump administration. So that spot is vacant, and I think at our next board meeting, the chair will talk about giving us another person for this slot. In the meantime, I also wanted to acknowledge that it's peculiar to be asking the two of you to approve the minutes from our last Grants and Reporting Committee meeting, which was before our last grant big presentation last cycle. I talked to Wesley Shackelford, who's our expert on Robert's Rules of Order and such matters, and he basically said after looking into it that what we should advise you all to do is to recommend, I can assure you that the staff have reviewed the minutes and believe that they're accurate, and to just ask you to approve the minutes with the acknowledgement that you weren't in attendance and that it's based on the staff's recommendation. So I believe we would have a motion for that.
All right, I will move to approve the previous minutes with the asterisk that neither of the voting members today were present, but we trust that if there's an error, it looks like Judge Maderi was present, and so she's capable of pointing that out to somebody if need be.
I'll second that.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we've got our first committee motion adopted. That's great progress. Thank you for that technical kind of step here. I would direct your attention to page 7 in the meeting materials for just a quick update. Obviously, we're talking today about making grant awards, and we want you all to understand where we stand financially. And we do have good news to report on the budget front. As you may recall from a previous board meeting, we've in the current biennium been experiencing a revenue shortfall that caused us to have to curtail our grant making, both on the formula grant side and our improvement grant side. That had a lot to do with a particular source of revenue that had been directed to TIDC in years past, related to excess funds in the jury service fund that at the end of the year would come over to the TIDC budget via the fair defense account. That money is no longer there, even though it was appropriated to us this year. The revenue didn't come in to support the appropriation, so we've been in a shortfall. Scott, do you want to go over the budget update, or would you like me to lay it out?
I can lay it out real quick. Actually, if you go to the next page, Eric, I think these tables are helpful in terms of kind of laying it all out. That shortfall that Edwin mentioned before was our exceptional item 1 request. We had modified that at the beginning of the session because the Office of Capital and Forensic Writs used to take funds from the fair defense account, and the legislature did a funding swap. And so they now get all of their funds from general revenue, not the fair defense account. And so we had modified the first request from 12 million to 19.7 million to try to capture those funds and be authorized to use them. And the legislature instead decided that they would like to let those funds accumulate because otherwise we were, the fair defense account would basically have been drained completely. And so they want to build up that account again. And so those funds will just accumulate in the fair defense account between now and next session. But they did give us 10 million of our original 12 million request on item number 1. Item number 2 of our exceptional items that y'all had approved was for the pipeline program to address attorney shortages and we were going to do that with paid internships, paid fellowships, and loan repayment. And the legislature declined to approve that item. We had also asked for $47.5 million in 5 FTEs for family protection representation. And unfortunately, the legislature declined to give us any money for that either. The 4th exceptional item was for $35 million to create new public defender offices and expand existing ones. And they gave us $8.7 million in GR for that. So overall, at a baseline level, they gave us $18.7 million in general revenue and no additional FTEs. And so that's that first table, and then the one below that, you'll see kind of the breakdown between what our budget looks like for non-OLS funds, and then the Operation Lone Star budget remains at $41 million. Cases are down significantly in Operation Lone Star, but there are lots of cases that still remain in the pipeline. And so at this point, I'm doubtful we will need to spend that full $41 million, but it has been appropriated to us in case we need it.
Scott,
And
can
then
can I interject real quick on this
Yes.
part? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to focus on that first line of our regular appropriation and that biennium over biennium comparison that shows us up about 10 million. One thing to note here about that figure and how much more we have this biennium over last is that it's understating the better position that we're in the sense that for the appropriation for the current biennium, some of the money they appropriated didn't come in terms of this revenue. It wasn't supported by the revenue. So if you adjust the amount that we had actually available to us in the current biennium, it's about 10 million less than what is shown here. So if in practical terms, we have about 20 million this biennium more than we have in the current biennium to work with, because we did have to make adjustments to the revenue that was actually being collected. So,
And pardon me if you already said that when you talked about the shortfall previously, but the 26-27 money is not in danger of the same thing happening again. That's actual dollars you expect to receive.
that's correct, because it is general revenue, which is automatically available in our account on day one. Dollars we can count on, not ones that depend upon court cost collections or anything. So yes, it's,
And yeah, and from the get-go, we wanted to be as accurate as possible with the legislature. And we told them up front, hey, we need to adjust the fair defense account revenue downward. And so, from the get-go, we were transparent about that, and so they've made up for that shortfall with general revenue. The last table you'll see, there were some budget riders that actually increased the available funds that we will have for the next biennium. So that first item you'll see, excuse me. So it's actually, if you look at the third item there, it says SB1 rider unspent OLS funds. So we have leftover Operation Lone Star funds right now, and they authorized TIDC through a budget rider to allow us to spend those unspent OLS funds into this biennium up to $10 million. And we should definitely have that available, that full amount available to spend into the next biennium. And we have an item coming up to issue a new request for applications to get that out to the counties. There are some caveats here. It has to be spent in rural counties, and it has to be spent on either one-time expenditures or temporary assistance for programs in rural counties. So there are some restrictions on what we can spend it for. We'll get into that a little bit more here in a minute. And then finally, the legislature also appropriated through the supplemental appropriations bill, HB 500, $5.1 million to make up for that shortfall from the current biennium. So overall, the appropriation comparing last biennium to this biennium is an additional $25.3 million.
so we're in much better shape. It's not as if we don't have to be careful. We're always careful, but we have some breathing room to actually look at these new programs that have been proposed and move a number of them forward. So much better shape than the last grant cycle, and we're glad to report that. Thanks, Scott, for laying all that out.
Sure.
Eric, you can go on to the next page. So as Scott mentioned, 5.1 million in the supplemental bill becomes available to us immediately, and that was kind of backward looking to make up for our shortfall in this biennium. So they've addressed us moving forward. The 5.1 was some effort to help us to cope with the shortfall in the current biennium. So when we first encountered the shortfall, we had to adjust our budget to curtail both improvement grants and the formula grant. The formula grant had been around 20.5 million. We reduced it to 17.5 million last year and to 17 million this year. We haven't made payments and issued the funds for the 2025 grant yet. In light of our improved budget situation and that supplemental appropriation, we're recommending that we increase the formula grant for the 2025 award back to 20.5 million, since basically a lot of those funds associated with the shortfall have been restored, and we're able to do that without any other opportunity costs. So that's really the first recommendation we have for you all regarding this committee's recommendation to the full board, is to increase the 25 formula grant budget that restores it to 20.5 million. So I would just ask. I mean,
Sorry,
we
I
do
was
have a
muted.
That's okay.
I was going to say, I see that on our list of motions. So would you like me to go ahead with that now?
Yes, if there are no
Okay.
questions.
So I'll move to recommend increasing the FY 2025 formula grant award budget from 17 million to 20.5 million.
Second the motion.
Right.
All in favor? Do we have to formally vote with our all in favor if our motion and second are the only voting members?
I think that,
Yes. Yes, because we're actually supposed to discuss it. We would.
Oh, that's right. We have discussion. Aha. Any
We
discussion?
have to do the motion in the second in order to discuss it at all. before-
Right.
Got it. Judge
So if
Woolley,
you-
any discussion?
Well, Judge Miskell, you could say something that makes me now want to vote no. No, I don't think I have anything. I think if we have the money to go back up to where we were at, and as long as we have the need for it. I mean, obviously, if we decreased it because there was no need, I don't see why we'd want to increase it, but we obviously have the need, so I'm in favor.
okay, great. Thank you for that.
We need a vote. Do we?
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. We are going to dot our i's and cross our t's. I appreciate y'all for that attention to detail. Next item is also Scott teed up for us in his budget summary is because we were given the authority to carry forward $10 million from the current biennium of unused Operation Lone Star funds for the specific use moving forward of helping rural PD existing PD programs with temporary or one-time assistance. We'd like to issue a special supplemental request for applications so that our programs can come to us and tell us what would be helpful that fits that category. I've outlined just, at a high level, some ideas off the top of my head for the types of things we might see, but that's just the kind of out of thin air. We'll see what people come forward with. Like every grant request, it would be presented to this committee and the board for approval, but we just need the authority to issue an RFA.
And this was for the 5.1 million in rider funds. Is that what you're saying?
This is specifically related to the 10 million of leftover OLS that
Got
we've
it, okay.
gotten. We've been allowed to carry over via a budget rider, but it has to be used for rural programs, existing programs, and one-time or temporary assistance.
Okay, so I'm sorry, going back to that chart that we had, there were two riders. One was this $10 million that you're talking about, and then the other one was 5.1.
So the 5.1 was actually not a budget rider. It was a part of the supplemental appropriations bill that the legislature adopts every year to address fixing issues in the current biennial budget.
Got
And
it.
in that budget, in the supplemental bill, they gave us 5.1 million because they said, yes, TIDC, you came up short this biennium. Here's 5.1 to help you.
Okay,
So that's separate from the 10.1 million in leftover OLS funds, which is what this is about. I'm sorry, 10 million.
okay. I couldn't remember if the discussion on the restrictions for it applied to both, and you're saying, no, this is just for the 10 million. Okay.
That's right.
So you need a motion
Yes, we do have a motion on this.
authorize staff to issue a special supplemental request for applications for one-time expenses or temporary assistance for rural defender programs as outlined in the legislative budget rider. That's the motion.
Yes.
We have a second.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
Any
Any-
discussion?
Any discussion?
No, I think I mean, I like it. I think if a lot of those things that you laid out there, Edwin, were things we were trying to do through the legislature. And I mean, I guess this is kind of a backdoor to do some of those things. So I think
Yes.
I'd like to
Thank
see
you
us
for-
I'd like to see us kind of focus on those requests for getting some more attorneys in those rural areas.
Agreed. Thank you for bringing that up, Judge Woolley. And I did have a conversation with the Senate staffer on this in terms of, getting a sense of what the legislators were thinking of. And when it comes to, for example, if a office wants to fund a paid internship program, the indication I got was if the county is coming to us and they, are requesting, these funds for a paid internship or a paid fellowship, with the understanding that this is not a permanent program, right? This is, we can fund this paid internship, for, you know, this coming semester or, next summer, maybe they would come to us for that, with the understanding, hey, this is not going to be an ongoing thing that we have money for, that was okay. Other ideas they had suggested was, boosting the match that TIDC gives to these programs, for the sustainability grants. We now are giving 2/3 funding on an ongoing basis, or 80% in the first year. So theoretically, if a county wanted to, boost that, the amount that they would like TIDC to fund on a temporary basis, that would be okay as well. So, I think we just have to make it clear, right, that these are for temporary or one-time types of expenditures. And what we want to do, we want to get this RFA out between now and August, because then y'all could approve grants under this program in August and they could get rolling. Otherwise, right, we would have to wait until December for y'all to approve all that. So we want to get this, out the door ASAP, so they can, start getting that enhanced funding for the next biennium, for the next year at least. And
Did we vote?
Not yet.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Yeah, and I just, as a note, we always try to make it clear that when we give a grant, normally we're working with the county to make permanent improvements. So the temporary thing is not generally how we do things, but we'll communicate it effectively. We're still interested in our core program, of course, and permanent improvements. Okay, moving to the next page, we have a couple of different, I've organized the continuing grant slates based on programs that don't have any budget changes to consider at this time. So we're just moving forward into the next fiscal year with no changes, and then ones that had some changes to their continuing grants that had changes to their budget. And then after that, we'll take up the new grant requests. So all of the continuing grants that are listed on both of these sheets are programs that have been approved in the past. TIDC always makes grant awards fiscal year, or almost always fiscal year by fiscal year. And so that we revisit them each year. This particular slate, the baseline budget, which is the program's total operating budget from the previous year that's been previously vetted and approved, is just carrying forward with no changes. So we do have a motion. There are a couple of notes here that indicate that some of these counties have told us we still haven't finished our budgeting process with our county stakeholders, and we'll come back to you with an amendment request in the future. But at this point, we're going to propose going ahead with their baseline budget, and if there are changes down the road, we'll come back. So
And help me understand why the amounts step down from the total program budget to the recommended award. Is that because
Sure.
it's finishing out the remaining year to date or something?
Yeah, so there are different types of grants have different reimbursement percentages. How should I best put this? The total program budget. So TIDC rarely funds 100% of a program, and there are exceptions, but usually we either are funding a program based on a step down 4-year grant, which is 80% in the first year, 60% in the second year, 40, 20, and then the county takes it over. Or in sustainability grants, 80% initially, and then leveling off at 2/3. So there's always going to be a difference because we share expenses with the local jurisdiction in normal cases. So the total program budget is the percentage that we're covering varies. And then to make it even more complicated, for those counties that are on the 80, 60, 40, 20 type grants, the step down grants, as we refer to them, sometimes if there is a delay in their startup, they may be eligible for some part of the year at 60% and some part at 40%. And we have to do messy math to kind of figure that out. So that's the difference between those two numbers.
Okay, thank you. Are you
So
ready for a motion on that one, or are you still
Yeah, we're
discussing?
ready. We're ready for
Okay.
that.
So this was for the motion to award the continuing FY 2026 improvement grants, the ones with no budget changes, according to the schedule on page 11 of the meeting notebook. So is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you all. So Eric, if you could put up the revised with changes, continuing with changes sheet, that's the one. So I've emailed this to you all earlier today, and as I said, we're really working through some of these budget details. There's, as you can imagine, with all these grants, a lot of numbers to vet. So we did refine things a bit, and this is the continuing slate of programs with budget changes requested. And you can see my notes here. So I'll just jump in and work my way down. So these are all programs that we've been funding already. And these are, but they do have increases in this year's budget. I'll also just point out as a general matter that, as I think you know from just daily life, that it's very typical for programs to have incremental increases. And sometimes programs have more substantial changes that are necessary because of their compensation being out of alignment with the market, the labor market in this area. And so we'll have a few like that and a few that are very routine. Also, before we jump into the details here, I just want to share with you that last year, this is our TIDC 2024 public defense salary study. It's on our website. I'm happy to send it to y'all via email, but this is what we look to at the staff level when we're looking at salaries and proposed changes in salaries. This was based on a statewide market survey of public defense compensation, looking at where folks are, and then the board at that time, when the salary study was completed, had adopt some guidance for us on what sorts of how to use this information to vet proposed changes in compensation for programs where we're providing funding. So that's kind of our benchmark. For the most part, these are well within the parameters and the budget policies set by the board based on our salary research. And I'll just mention when, if and when those that's not the case. But you can assume that it is the case unless I would mention it. So the first one here, Atascosa County, this is the Atascosa Area Advocates or Regional Public Defenders serving 4 counties. That's Frio, Wilson, Atascosa, and oh my goodness, I'm going to forget somebody. And another
Barnes.
Karnes, thank you, Karnes County. We love Karnes County. This is one of our sustainability grants programs that's eligible for the 2/3 rural regional sustainability funding. They have a 4.6% increase overall. That's largely driven by a cost of living adjustment, COLA. If you're not, I'm probably familiar with the abbreviation, but just in case, the COLA is cost of living adjustment. So very much in line with what we would expect, and based on the policy guidance that we have about countywide COLA adjustments, we deem it as presumptively reasonable, and so it has a positive recommendation. I should pause a moment and ask you all if you would like to, we have a motion for the slate. If you would like to break it up and just do a motion for each one, we can. So I'll defer to you all about whether you'd prefer for me to just work down and pause me, interrupt me with questions, or if you want to take them up one by one.
I would recommend that we just have you overview the whole slate, and then unless we have any specific concern, we'll just move on the whole slate.
Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay, so next item is B County. This is also one of our longest standing rural regional public defender programs. That's B, Live Oak, and McMullen counties. This program has always been contracted to originally Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, and then when they split off their public defender division to Texas Rio Grande Public Defender. So they're on the sustainability grant program receiving 2/3. The changes this year for the contract for the public defender, regional public defender services, is up 7.3%. That is largely driven by a couple of salary adjustments for leadership that I think are well supported and in line with our salary study guidance and policy. but there's also an increase in their shared organizational costs. So Texas Rio Grande Public Defender is one of our big service providers for the Operation Lone Star program. And as that program scales down because of the dramatic changes in the number of new cases, there's still a lot of cases in the pipeline, but we have been adjusting the resources deployed for OLS. So their program on the OLS side has shrunken pretty dramatically, or is about to shrink pretty dramatically. And so when they're kind of allocating their broader organizational costs to their different programs, there's less to allocate than there used to be to that piece of their work. And that's part of why their other programs that they serve are going up a bit. So it's not a big increase. It's we think very well justified, but just flagging that it is up 7% this year.
I think another thing to point out is with any of our grant applications, the county has approved of the application. And so this has, gone through a county-based vetting process as well.
Thank you for flagging that, Scott, since y'all are new to the committee process here. Yeah, all the grant applications have to first be approved by the local stakeholders, and they're approving the budget and the grant applications, and then so we're not the only ones looking at the numbers. And of course, almost everything has county matching funds, so everybody's got a dog in the hunt. Next item, we have a couple of items that I've marked in green just because they're updated from when we originally shared these materials with y'all. Brazos County has a public defender office that we helped them start up with grant funds a couple of years ago. It's been very successful. It's relatively small. I think it's 10 staff in their current program or so. The program has been, so they originally were set up prior to us doing the statewide salary study, and they have included some changes to their compensation schedule that were based on the TIDC salary study research, and also very careful analysis of where they stood vis-a-vis the prosecutors in the jurisdiction who were similarly situated and experienced, so that there would be some rough parity between the prosecution and defense side. So we've gotten and reviewed all that material. The increase here is 12.7%. Again, largely driven by changes in compensation that would align their salaries more in line with the TIDC salary study and with parity with the local prosecutor salaries. So we're supporting that. I did go back and forth with Brazos County to help them refine their budget, and they did bring it down a bit. So as you can see, their original proposed budget was just under 1.8 million total program budget. It's now down to 1.672. So we worked back and forth to get that refined, and I think it's in a good place where we're ready for that to be recommended. The award is based on that. They're eligible in that program for their continuing program for 60% this year in terms of the second year of the step down. They had been originally started up under special ARPA funding that we had, and now they're on the 60. Next year will be the 60% year of their step down. Next item is from Medina County. They host the Hill Country Regional Public Defender Office. That's Gillespie, Kerr, Bandera, Medina, of course, and Kendall. So 5 counties. Great program that's been operational for a number of years, but also because it was sort of a legacy program prior to us having a lot of these statewide salary numbers, their compensation really was out of line with what the market conditions were looking at, and they had a couple of positions that were folks left to due to money and getting poached. So they do have some changes that they've requested here. Overall, it's looking at like a 16% increase. We did similarly go back and forth. We the staff went back and forth with them to refine and adjust the numbers. And so you can see that their total came down a bit from their original total program budget. But we think that it's again, all the compensation is in line with our research and the relevant comps on the prosecutor side. So it's well supported, and we have a positive recommendation for approving that adjustment. Next item is Potter County. Potter County does include, that's also yes, we have two Potters. The Panhandle Area Regional Public Defender Office, currently serving 6 counties. Great program that's been up and running for a few years. They have high hopes that they're going to continue to expand as the neighboring counties see what a great job they've been doing. They do have some increases this year that are largely related to growth in caseload for new staff to meet the increased caseload. And I'll just give you a quick detail about one of those counties in the program that I'm not going to name the county, but at very low appointment rates prior to this program being in place. Once this program was in place, and they actually are somewhat unusual in that they're involved in staffing magistrations and really there at the very beginning of the cases, the appointment rate went up pretty dramatically. It was well below the norm in this county, and it went up substantially. But the county recognizes that the program, or rather the system, is operating much more effectively and appropriately than it had been before the office was there. But as a result, our people were getting counsel, suggesting that in the past, maybe not everybody who should have been appointed was. So that's one example of some of the things that are driving their caseload, but they've done the analysis. The staffing for the program is based on the TIDC caseload guidelines that were a result of a big research project a number of years ago. And so we are supporting their request for 4 new staff for the Potter Panhandle area office. Next item, the Regional Public Defender Office for Capital Cases, Local Government Corporation. The LGC is Local Government Corporation. This is the statewide opt-in capital defender program that TIDC has funded for a number of years. Excuse me. Doing too much talking. We do have, if you would like to hear from them, some representatives from the program if you have questions about this. But at our last board meeting, we did take up an interim budget adjustment request for the program that was approved. And we heard from Ray Keith, the chief defender of that program, about very long-standing and persistent difficulties staffing. They have a number of open positions, and their compensation hadn't been adjusted in a number of years. And so, again, they are coming forward with a 9% increase overall that's based on cost of living adjustments that the program hadn't been giving on a regular basis in the past, and the market salary adjustments to address some of these problems with retention and recruitment that have left them significantly understaffed. One thing I want to note about this is that this program is somewhat unusual in that we allow them to operate. It's jointly funded by us. We fund 2/3 of the operation, and then the remaining 1/3 is covered by the participating counties. I think it's just under 180 Texas counties that are participating in the program, and all those counties pay a portioned share of the balance that is not funded by TIDC. So they do maintain a reserve fund balance because of their unique structure and model. And the initial, if this budget adjustment is approved, which we recommend strongly it is, they are able to fund the increased costs initially out of a growth in the reserve fund balance that they have, largely because they've had so many vacancies for so long. So it would not impact the grant. Our grant would be flat for them for 2026, as they would just use up some of that accumulated fund balance to fund the increase in compensation. However, in future years, it would increase the TIDC cost by about 9%. We think it's well justified and are recommending it to you today. There are no questions about that. I'll go to Tom Green County. Tom Green County originally created the Concho Valley Regional Public Defender Program, serving 7 counties in that area. And then some years later, they expanded to cover what we call the Big Country regional expansion, an additional 4 counties around Abilene. And so we have, for partly historical reasons, and the funding buckets that have been used to fund these, we have them separated between the Big Country regional expansion and the core original 7 counties. Both programs are looking at a 3% cost of living adjustment, which is presumptively deemed reasonable and recommended based on our policy guidance. And then they are also proposing a handful of new positions. So for the first position is shared between the two programs across their system, and it's a discovery management technician. So as you can imagine, with the number of cases that this program is serving, 11 counties, and has a substantial caseload and a huge amount of discovery material, most all of it electronic, and they have a serious need to manage that workflow better by having a dedicated person that facilitates the processing and sharing of the large voluminous discovery material. We think that's a well-supported additional employee that would be shared between the two halves of the program, if you will. They are also asking for a new social worker that would be I'll take these up in order. Let's talk about the first one, the core program. So that new discovery management position would be shared between both halves. They're asking for an additional felony attorney because of caseload guidelines. Their felony caseload has gotten to the point where the attorneys are exceeding the TADC caseload guidelines, and they need to add additional capacity to continue to operate within those parameters. Similarly, they're asking for an additional appellate attorney because, again, their appellate caseload has grown over the years, and the previous position that was, or rather the position that was handling those appeals had a mixed caseload, but now is handling all appeals, and they need more capacity on the appellate front. So they're asking for those new positions. So we've looked at that with them and think that it's well supported by caseload, and that drives the year-over-year increase for the core Tom Green. Moving down to the Big Country expansion counties, in addition to the shared position, they're asking for a defense team social worker for the Abilene office. They do have one of those defense team social workers in the office, the main office, that has been very effective as a force multiplier and helping to ensure effective representation, particularly for defendants with mental health disorders. And so they're just looking for that balance between the two sides of the program because it's been very effective to have that capacity in the main office. So we recommend all those positions. We think they're very well supported by the numbers. And if there are no questions, I'll go down to Victoria. This is just a small indigent defense coordinator grant. There was a modest COLA increase, but there was a substantial increase in the county's allocated healthcare costs for that single position that we're funding there. So the grant is tiny this year. It's less than $13,000, but it is an increase. Similarly, Wilson County, we fund 2 indigent defense coordinators. We're on the kind of tail end. I think we're moving into the last year of this grant for them. 8% increase for a couple of positions and some modest increases in fringe. Very small in real dollars, but we think it's perfectly justified. It's just on here because it's up year over year. And then lastly, the Capital Area Private Defender Service is the nonprofit that runs the MyPadilla statewide resource. This is a program that supports both Operation Lone Star cases and is a resource to defenders across Texas who need to get a Padilla advisal for their client. This has increased 13% this year. One of the big drivers on this was that the program has not previously had a budget line item for indirect expenses. They are a nonprofit, their primary orientation of which is being the managed assigned counsel program serving Travis County under contract. But they do have organizational costs that have not been particularly included and funded in our budgets. For example, all that back office stuff, auditing, accounting, HR, etc. And so they have added to their budget this year for us what we believe is a very modest and very reasonable indirect cost line item. So a big part of that 13% is just giving them a few percentage points to cover the overhead associated with administering the program. And then there were some salary adjustments that were certainly in line with the TIDC study that we thought were reasonable, and we're recommending them. That concludes my overview of this page. I know it's a lot of information, but because there are budget changes, wanted to touch on each of them. We do have folks that could potentially be brought in if you have questions or want to hear more, but I'll stop talking and leave it to you all to decide what's next.
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, the legislature approved for state employees, was their COLA 6% this year?
They,
Yes.
the state judiciary, I think, had a blanket 6%
Okay.
increase. Yes.
Okay, so that was just judiciary. All right, got it. I was
Yeah.
just gonna say 3% is reasonable and seems like on consistent with what the legislature did in other areas.
Right. And of course, these are programs where they're indirectly supported by state funds, but these are almost all operated by counties, or there's a nonprofit in here. And the counties typically go through a countywide process independent of our grants to decide what they're doing with their staff across their system. And usually it's going to be hovering around these ranges that are tied to the consumer price index or some look at actual inflation.
Are they really though?
Are they looking at those?
I'm a county employee and I can promise you that our cost of living increases in the last 7 years have not kept up with the consumer price index. I can promise.
Yeah, there's a pretty wide variety, and that probably has to do with the different county budgets and the different leadership. But yeah, there is some difference.
I personally think 3% is a little low, but
Yeah.
I get it. That's what they did. I don't have any issues with anything on the page. I guess the question, I do have one question on the Wilson County or the Regional Indigent Defense Coordinator team.
Mhm.
But Atascosa counties has Wilson County under their regional PDO.
So the Atascosa County, we are funding the regional PDO is funded hosted by Atascosa County. They're the fiscal agent. With respect to these IDCs, Wilson County was the fiscal agent. So the indigent defense coordinator positions are not, they have sort of a different function from actually providing the representation as the PD does. And they're the ones that are managing that front end process of people requesting counsel, getting vetted to see if they qualify, making the appointment to the PD or other attorney if necessary. And so it's separated out from the public defender, but there is some overlap. You're right, in that Wilson County and Atascosa are,
So the regional, the RIDC, are they the same? Are they covering those same 4 counties as the PDO?
These 2 positions are covering 2 of those 4 counties, I believe. Yes. So they're covering the function of processing requests for counsel, whereas the funding that we have going through Atascosa for the regional PD, that's the chief defender and her staff who are actually doing the representation. So there's sort of the process management on the IDC side and the substantive representation on the PDs.
Let me ask a follow-up question to that, which is, I know in Collin County, our indigent defense coordinator, in addition to those functions, also had a lot added on for mental health with the new laws that keep being passed about identifying inmates with mental health issues and helping so that they're not just staying in the jail.
Yes.
Is that true of indigent defense coordinators generally? That's also a function that they do, or was that just how we chose to arrange it in Collin County?
I think that's not what they do generally. I mean, they certainly can be helpful in terms of, because they're often dealing with in vetting whether somebody qualifies for counsel. They can often say, hey, this person might need a referral, but that's not a typical part of the IDC role. One of the things that we have to be kind of mindful of is, the indigent defense coordinator is not the same as pretrial services, supervising PR bonds, or there are all kinds of things that are associated with similar functions in the court system that are kind of outside of the wheelhouse. What we're focused on when TIDC funds IDCs is really those requirements of the statute related to that originated in the Fair Defense Act. That people have the opportunity to apply, that gets processed timely, that the appointment is made timely, and it's more of a narrow focus. But in practice, I think there's some overlap. So I think it's a little bit unique with the way it's structured in Collin.
Collin County, they have a combined indigent defense coordinator and a mental health managed assigned counsel program, and it's all wrapped up into one single office. So they are unique in that circumstance, in that there's Really, I mean, yeah, like to Edwin's point, like the IDC is usually separate from the Managed Assigned Counsel program, but in Collin, they have combined those two duties into one office.
Okay, I thought I would ask because that's my only experience is that way, and I didn't know if that was representative or not representative.
I would say I would characterize it as not representative, but nonetheless very useful.
Yes, yes.
All right, Judge Woolley, any other questions before we move? All right, then I will move to recommend the award of continuing FY 2026 improvement grants, the ones with the budget changes that we just looked at, according to the updated schedule that you emailed out today.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. So we'll move on to our new grant requests. Before I jump into this, Eric, if you could put up the revised new grant table that I
While
included.
you're getting that ready, for the purposes of this meeting, since this is my first one, are all the things you're bringing to us all have room in the budget and could potentially all be approved, or are there things that we're trying to rank?
Yes, so when you get a staff recommendation from us on funding, so part of the reason that I wanted Scott to, or we wanted to make sure that you had the budget update is because everything that we present to you with the recommendation is, you can be assured that we have vetted the budget and there's room for it. So we always make sure that we have sufficient funds and everything that is recommended we have sufficient funds for. We filter that, I guess, for you.
Okay.
So there's no need to rank. Let me talk a little bit, since we were talking about ranking, let me give you a little bit of a glimpse into the process leading up to this meeting. So we get the applications, we do the RFA every year. We get the applications and you start reviewing them at the staff level. We also have an external grant review committee of 4 indigent defense very experienced experts and stakeholders from various backgrounds that we call them the External Grant Review Committee. We ask them to review them and give us their feedback to, help us at the staff level think of things from different perspectives and talk it out. And then we have a debrief meeting with them. So that process has been going on, and as you'll see on some of the subsequent pages, we have some summaries of some of the feedback we got from our external reviewers that we're sharing with you. So in addition to the staff review, we have this other group of folks that have helped us vet these things before we make a recommendation to you. So yes, I guess that's what I wanted to just let you know, that we've been working on it with others. Let's see. So this is just an overview. We'll take these up one by one because they're all new requests. But the last thing I want to say about the new requests is, if you look at the summary chart on the rightmost column, we have the awards that we are recommending today at this time. The only reason those 2 are highlighted in green is because that was an update. We were still waiting for budget refinement, and those are just highlighted to show that it was different from the originally circulated materials. You'll see that some of these awards are blank in the recommended column. That you should not infer from that TADC doesn't think that we should move these forward, but as noted, we'll have a number of grants, a handful of grants, where and this is very routine for us, where we have reviewed it and we think at this point we need to work with the applicant to refine it, clarify things, address questions. And for most of these, we're very, very optimistic. I would put it in my own head at 95% optimistic that in most of these cases, it's just a matter of scheduling a series of meetings and making some refinements to the application before we would be back at our August meeting with a positive recommendation. So I'll note those as we go through, but we think a number of these are ready to move forward in advance, and we're recommending them. Handful need some more work, and we're going to touch on them and flag them for you and tell you that we'll be bringing them back to you in August. And that's still in advance of, so all of this is for 2026, fiscal 26 on the grant year side starts on October 1st. So even if we revisit something in August, it would still be in place for next fiscal year. So just a little bit of process note. we can go ahead and jump in, I think, page by page. But before we leave this page, Eric, if you could scroll up a little bit. The total amount that we're recommending today, I'm sorry, scroll down just a bit, is about 6.8 million, very easily accommodated. And in fact, most everything here is easily accommodated, and we're planning to come back with positive recommendations on the remainder. But let's jump into the pages for each of the requests, overview pages of each of the requests. So the first one is a request from Atascosa County for the defense component of a new mental health specialty court. We funded the defense. We are not able to fund court costs or specialty court programs. The governor's office has a grant program that helps counties with specialty courts more broadly. The piece that we can come in on is the defense component. So they've asked for a dedicated attorney and a mental health social worker that would basically be the defense piece of the specialty court program. We think it's a great program. It has got a lot of potential for doing good. We think that it would be ideal for the defense piece of this to be handled by the very successful local public defender, as opposed to having to, say, contract it out or something. So we're 95% sure that we can get there, but through the course of talking through some of the details of the application and how it would be implemented with our external committee, we think that we would like to schedule a meeting or two, talk through it in more detail, and just kind of refine their proposal. So we're not ready to move forward at this juncture, but like I said, we're fully expecting that we can resolve some of the questions and clarify some of the ways that it would work that would get us there. So I'll leave it there at this point, unless y'all want to jump into any of the details.
So is that, I'm assuming that specialty court is just in Atascosa County right now?
Yeah, so the way that it's been presented so far, it would just be serving Atascosa, but they would like to, and they hope to, after it gets up and running, bring in all the counties in that judicial
Sure.
district. That would
Okay.
be that'd be the game plan.
And then that position would be dealing with the regional and not just Atascosa County at that point.
Right. So for from a budget perspective, I talked with the Atascosa auditor about this, where normally for their regional program, they have to kind of allocate across the 4 counties based on caseload, et cetera, for the part of the program costs that we don't handle. In this particular case, the part that we don't handle would be, which would in this
All
year,
Atascosa.
20% be all Atascosa. But they're very excited about it. I think the district judge has already got the grant. I'm not sure if it's finalized, but I know they got some support to set up the specialty court program, and we fully expect we'll be able to help establish the defense piece of it. So yeah, we'll be back with that one in August, and if there are no other questions, I'll jump on to Brazos. So as we talked about in the continuing grants, Brazos County has an existing PD that we've talked on. They've come to us they came to us last year hoping to expand, because the program really has been very successful. And we were very supportive last grant cycle of that. However, we ran into this fiscal trouble. We didn't have the money to move it forward then. So we're very happy to move it forward now. On my advice, they've broken their expansion up to the mental health piece and the non-mental health expansion piece, because of the way that TIDC gets funded. It's a little simpler for us to be able to bracket the mental health costs. We have $5 million each biennium from the ledge that has to be focused on mental health defenders programs. And so that's why we're seeing the Brazos PD expansion in 2 pieces. So the first piece is the juvenile and appellate division expansion. This would add substantial new capacity for juvenile cases and appeals. They have very few local attorneys qualified and able to handle appeals on their wheel, and they definitely need that additional capacity. And then they have seen an increase in juvenile cases and case filings that they believe would be best served by an expanded public defender team, as opposed to having to rely on the private bar. All of our reviewers rank this program very highly. Our external grant reviewers, as well as the staff, supported the funding. There were some questions on the proposed budget that I mentioned. In the last week or so, I've been going back and forth with the program with some very small bore specific budget questions and bigger questions. And we do have revised budget figures that were reflected on the summary sheet that we can refer back to. But all those budget questions have been resolved, and we're the recommended award is adjusted down from the originally requested award based on our back and forth and refinement with them. What in our request, the second paragraph here is that just referencing the fact that in our request for applications, we do have some priority program areas listed in the RFA, and this is just pointing out that this program definitely is right in TIDC's wheelhouse in terms of what the improvement grant is intended to do. And so we do have a positive recommendation to support this application. And Eric, if you can go back to the summary sheet, the number in green is revised for this. So we have a recommended award on that project based on the refinement of the budget of $987,560.
And then when we approve this, then it'll come back next year for 60% and the following year 40, et cetera. That's
right. And I should note regarding Brazos County, which is a single county program, so this is 80% for this first year. We have had conversations with Brazos County from the beginning about how they would like to become a regional program. They are a little bit larger than most of our rural regional PDs. And so, one of the issues that's been discussed by the board for a few years now is looking forward with existing or with new resources. We might want to create some kind of population tiers, if you will. So right now, if you're in the kind of rural category, you do a regional program, you qualify for 2/3 sustainability funding. Larger counties that are in a different situation, we think that we'd like to explore the possibility of having some kind of way for them to be a part of a regional program, but
the counties around them are not, they are very
small, right?
Yeah, very, very rural. I mean,
right. So if, for example, some of those very rural counties surrounding them joined, we think that because they're so tiny, they would clearly, if we did go in this direction, fall in the 2/3 category, but maybe Brazos itself would be in a 50% or 40%. So that's just something that's been discussed, I want to mention. But until we do that, we're on an 80-60-40-20 type schedule with them. So we do have a recommendation for $987,560 on the Brazos County grant. I should pause and say, do we want to do motions one by one? I would suggest, since these are new grants, we may want to do motions as we go through each request.
Okay, I will move to approve the new grant request for the Brazos County Juvenile Appellate Division expansion, which is on page 18 of my meeting PDF.
And I would just reference the updated budget on.
Yes, with the green number from the updated new grant chart that we reviewed.
So that would be an award of recommending award of $987,560.
That is what the motion, I accept the friendly amendment, and that is what the motion is.
second that motion.
Okay, so that's unanimous as far as I'm concerned, but
Okay.
thank you.
I guess my connection cut. Judge Woolley, you seconded?
Yes,
I
you
did.
did.
Okay, all right, then all in favor, aye, let's move on.
Okay, thank you. So the next item is also for Brazos County, and it's the mental health component. Excuse me. Very supportive of this. The reviewers supported it. There were a few budget questions. We went back and forth with the county to refine the budget. I want to thank the program staff for being so helpful in that process. But we do recommend the mental health component as well. This would just be 2 additional staff on this side of it. And we do have the adjusted budget in green. Eric, if you could go back to that. And we do have a motion to recommend the Brazos County Mental Health Division expansion at $250,325.
All right, I will make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next item is a little bit unusual for us because we usually don't have the legislature kind of directing us to fund particular programs. But in this year, we have a couple of budget writers that told us, flagged a couple of programs in particular that we're going to lay out and said, hey, you all need to fund this. Now, it doesn't mean just do it no matter what or however, but so we are under a legislative guidance in the budget rider to fund this expansion of the Far West Texas Regional Public Defender Office. Very successful program we started up a number of years ago that covers the 5 counties immediately to the east of El Paso in the Big Bend region. That program is expanding to Val Verde and Terrell counties, which is just kind of carrying it down on the southern end, 2 counties over along the Rio Grande. This was a program that was also presented to us in the last budget cycle, and we were very much wanting to move it forward, but we couldn't afford it last time. We can afford it this time, and we're glad to advance it. The program was also very positively recommended by our external reviewers. There were some questions that we were able to answer with our grant review committee team to everybody's satisfaction. So we have positive recommendations from the staff and the external reviewers on this, and we're told to do it. But the program's been a real game changer in those 5 counties east of El Paso. Folks are getting very good representation, and they've just addressed a lot of gaps in the system and really made a very positive difference. So we're very excited to see this development of the program. The one thing that I want to mention here is, I talked earlier about the salary study that we use and look to as guidance when we review budgets to see if something is kind of within the range that we'd expect and that would be presumptively approved. I will say that the salaries for the program, this particular program, are on the higher end of the spectrum, outside of the, above the 75th percentile, which is kind of the default presumptively approved threshold. I think there are a lot of good explanations for why their proposed salaries were a little on the higher end from what we have seen in other areas. I know, for example, that, well, first of all, it's very difficult to recruit in these areas. And we have a lot of experience with these recruiting difficulties, both in the Operation Lone Star context and outside of that context. And then also there's a lot of federal court activity that you're kind of competing with federal court rates in that area. So the market is somewhat different. So I will say that and that is why at the staff level we do have a recommendation to advance it, but I do feel like it's worth mentioning that the salaries were higher than the typical range that we're looking at. But I think that there were some good rationales for why that was appropriate in this case. I also want to mention that we have, I believe, on hold in the Zoom waiting room and probably following the meeting online, the chief defender, who we asked to be available to kind of speak to the unique issues of that market and the rationale for why those salaries were a little bit on the higher end. So happy to bring Mr. McDermott, the chief defender, and if y'all would like to.
I believe the first TIDC meeting I was at, he spoke about it and the lack of attorneys and the openings he had and challenges that went with. So I'm good with it.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. And also, I'm familiar with that district because that was former Judge Ferguson's territory. Is that correct?
That's right. Judge Ferguson was instrumental in getting that program launched. I remember when he called me years ago, and he was a real driver of getting it up and running. And he was the chair of the oversight board till he left the bench.
Let me ask you this. So the people that are on standby, I don't need to hear from them on this one, but I don't mean to brush them off if they would like to be heard. So are they wanting to talk to us, or they're just here for our questions?
So they're just here for questions. I mean, I think, at the staff level, we're never quite, we don't pretend to predict what you all might want to hear more on. So we just say, be available in case. And so there's no expectation for giving you a presentation. And if you are, comfortable with it as we've laid it out, then I don't think there's any need to bring them in.
Okay.
But so defer to you.
I just didn't want to be dismissive if they were expecting to join us.
But I feel like Edwin just made a cut at us being judges. Like they don't know how to take us. They don't know.
We always want to give you the option to provide detail on demand, but also not overwhelm you with more than you want. So
I remember Mr. McDermott coming to that first meeting. I can remember pretty much everything he said and the challenges he faced. So I'm all for it. I mean, and it's probably the model PDO. So whatever we can do to help him out, I'm good with.
And we have two things to vote on regarding Culberson County today. Is that correct? There was another one that came through.
So the Culberson County did have is on the continuing grant slate in terms of their existing program covering the Far West Texas RPDO. They are in the slate of continuing grants with changes, which you've already acted. I mean, yeah, you've already acted on it.
Okay, so let me go back to the page I was on. Okay, so I'm looking at page 20 of our meeting PDF. So I will move to approve the new grant request for the Far West Texas Regional Public Defender expansion to Valverde and Terrell counties.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Okay, next item is another one that I'm just including it, but this was submitted, this is from Hays County for a mental health division of their public defender office. They tried to get it into us on time, but it came in substantially after our deadline, and just with the capacity of staff, we haven't had a chance to vet it and properly review it and circulate it with our external committee. So it was basically a late submission. I think that it's very likely that we'll be back in August with a positive recommendation on this, but just based on capacity limitations, when it came in a couple weeks ago, we just haven't had a chance to run it through and do the vetting. So that one we will be back for. I will just very briefly, Hays County contracts with a nonprofit public defense provider called Neighborhood Defender Service. They've also been one of the nonprofit PD programs that's been providing Operation Lone Star services, and is a national organization that provides public defender services in other states. They are the contracted PD in Hays County, and that contracted PD program would like to add more capacity to service to have specialized representation for defendants with mental illness. So we expect to be back with that. We are very likely to find it in good shape for you in August. Next item, Lampasas County. This is an Indigent Defense Coordinator grant. One of the best things we can do for a county, particularly small rural counties where there's a lot of gaps in that front end process on those timelines for the Fair Defense Act timelines, is give them an IDC. Been working with Judge Garrett in that county on this, and it's going to make a big difference for them. We have a positive recommendation to help them get a new Indigent Defense Coordinator for Lampasas, and I'll leave it there. And we have a motion.
All right, I will move to approve the Lampasas County Indigent Defense Coordinator new grant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, y'all. Next item, Maverick County. As y'all may have seen, Maverick County has been the subject of a lot of media attention in recent months and years regarding their indigent defense processes. Not all, some of it quite alarming. TIDC and our policy monitoring operations have been working with Maverick County and finding some problems in their system for many years. We've been monitoring data, really trying to help them. And I feel like, we're really making a lot of progress more recently. Last grant cycle, even though we were very short on funds, we did find the money to make a grant award to Maverick County for an Indigent Defense Coordinator position, because so many of the problems had to do with getting those requests for counsel acted upon timely and tracking data. And so that program has just recently been put in place, and we think that's going to be very helpful. But really, beyond that, those issues around processing applications for counsel, there just aren't the attorneys down there on the private bar wheel that are keeping up with what's needed. And they really will enormously benefit from a regional public defender program. They don't have much of any track record in terms of implementing a public defender program. And so we think it's an ideal scenario that the Texas Rio Grande public defender, formerly Trala, that's been implementing these types of programs for rural Texas for a number of years and is well suited to do it well, is willing to partner with them. And so under this proposal, Maverick County would be contracting with Texas Rio Grande Public Defender, like they do with, for example, B County and those regional programs, to operate their system. This would be for non-Operation Lone Star cases. I should note that TRGPD currently is one of the service providers that's serving Maverick County on the Operation Lone Star side, but that's kind of a separate pot of money and a little bit of a walled off area. And because they're already down there doing that work, they're in an even better position to build on what they're doing and to start handling the quote unquote regular caseload in the region. So we're very excited about this, knowing all the problems that have been going on, and the fact that this is a regional solution will get them in the sustainability grant category with Zavala and Dimmitt counties so that they can benefit from the ongoing funding. These counties don't have a lot of extra money lying around, and they really need as much financial support as we can offer. So we're very much in support of this, as was our external grant review committee. We think TRGPD is in a great position, and we're very excited to present this with a positive recommendation.
So I was going to ask, I knew Maverick County was one of the Operation Lone Star counties. I understand that funding is specifically for Operation Lone Star cases. I just was curious whether having the quantity of Operation Lone Star cases in that county that are funded, has that had any positive like system-wide effects, or I don't know if you've noticed any improvements in Maverick County, even though that's not an ongoing money that can be used for other things?
Yeah, well, I can tell you this. So for a long time, since we started Operation Lone Star, the whole pipeline of people coming into that side of the criminal justice system has been kind of constructed as a parallel system. So there was separate magistration happening for OLS arrests. It was centralized. OCA was very involved. And so as a result of that, everything was being done right on the front end, which was not the case with the rest of the system. And so one of the best things that's happening here is that a lot of the benefits of OLS has shown us that in these regions, if we get on top of it and staff things and fund things well, they can make dramatic improvements. So things have improved in Maverick County and other parts of the OLS region, in large part because we've been very involved in setting up and sufficiently funding these kinds of programs. I think that's getting at your question. I hope it is.
Yeah, that answers my question.
Yeah, so I think we're going to see continued improvements, and we've had some great local stakeholders involved in coordinating this, and we're very optimistic. So we do have a motion on this.
All right, I will move to approve the Tri-County Public Defender Office initiative.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Move down to the next one. So the next one I think is a very good program that's just not quite ready. And so this is one that we're going to be asking to bring back to you in August after we just sit down and work through some clarification and further development of the game plan. This is adding some mental health, mental health social worker and mental health caseworkers to the existing Hill Country Regional Public Defender Office. Y'all have already taken up the continuing grant award for the current staffing footprint for that in the continuing grants. And we very much support this program. We think it's going to be getting a very positive recommendation, but there were some questions that came up just about implementation and structure. And we want to just sit down with the county based on some of the feedback from our reviewers, clarify things, help develop some of the aspects of the application about what the game plan is, about how these folks will plug in with the public defender and interact with other elements of the criminal justice system. And so we fully expect to be back with y'all in August with a positive recommendation on this, but we're just not quite there. No questions, I'll move on. So Polk County is requesting funding for a public defender office. This is one that we're asking to also put on hold for now and revisit in August. so that we can work with the county to further develop the application and the planning. As y'all know, TIDC, through our improvement grant team, Bill Cox and Kristen Meeks, led by Bill and Kristen, of course, we have all hands on deck, and a lot of our other folks are involved in the improvement team. But they will work with counties on a planning study process that results in a very detailed game plan for counties that would like to implement a new program. In this case, Polk County, I think just for timing reasons or whatever, they basically didn't have the opportunity to avail themselves of some of that consulting that we do on program design development and application assistance. And so they gave us a very good description of some of the challenges that they face with the current system. We very much want to help them, and we think that we would be able to come back in August with a positive recommendation, but we would like to just get our team involved in some more detailed planning about how the program would work. So we're very excited about this opportunity, but just not quite ready to move forward, not shovel ready, as they say. Great. Good little grant from Walker County that we're recommending an award for the implementation of TechShare's Indigent Defense Management System. So just as background, since y'all are new to this committee, TIDC a number of years ago gave a grant to Bell County to develop a software system, cloud-based, that would kind of help to manage indigent defense processes. This is vetting financially the person who requests counsel for financial eligibility, streamlining the vouchering process by making it electronic when attorneys are ready to bill, electronic routing through judges for the approval process, or kicking something back if there's a question or change that's needed. The program also basically kind of automates the wheel so that the next attorney on the wheel who's not on vacation and is qualified for that level of offense gets the appointment. So this is a great system that has been refined over the years. It's now managed and implemented by the TechShare that's been affiliated, that's been an offshoot of the Conference of Urban Counties nonprofit. And so anyway, just a little bit of background if you're not familiar with what TechShare Indigent Defense is. They also have software modules for prosecutors' offices, the courts, and it's a program that's been built by the counties over the years. But we've had great success with these, helping the counties use technology in this way. What we fund is if a county wants to implement it, 50% of the implementation project, which is training the local stakeholders, which there are a lot of auditors, judges, indigent defense coordinators, on how to use it, configuring the system, getting it all set up for them. We don't fund the kind of annual cost, but we just help counties by splitting the cost with them to implement it. So positive recommendation for Walker County. We have a motion.
All
I'll
right,
make the motion.
go ahead. I'll second.
Good to see y'all mixing it up.
All right, so that was the TechShare implementation project. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, not a lot of money, but I did want to give you the background on what this thing is because we often refer to it, and just for clarification. Eric, what's next on the horizon? So this is another one for Wharton County that the legislature has earmarked in a budget rider and said, TIDC, y'all need to fund this project. However, they didn't need to do that because TIDC had this request on the table at the last cycle, and we were very ready to move it forward, but didn't have the funds at the time. So as decisions go, this is one of them that is overdetermined. The project is for a regional public defender office that would be serving Wharton and Matagorda County. We've been working with the stakeholders down there for a number of years. We've gone through that formal planning study process with our team. We've done a planning study as well as updating that planning study to reflect kind of revisions in the numbers and the caseload analysis, et cetera. So it's been done and revisited. And the way that they have constructed their application is basically to implement all of TIDC's recommendations in the planning study. So we can't quibble with that. So beyond that, I want to just note a couple of things for your benefit. First of all, you'll note that this is serving 2 counties. Typically, our baseline policy is that for a program to qualify for rural regional PD, 3 or more counties. We do fund a 4-county program based in Victoria. That program is still kind of getting its sea legs. It's been up and running. They're doing great, but they weren't ready to expand at this juncture, even though Matagorda and Wharton really needed to move forward now. And so we were prepared to recommend an exception to that policy to get this moving anyway, but it is a 2-county program. And then the other thing I want to note is that you'll see that it's 100% funding for year 1. And then for our projections in the out years, going to the standard 2/3 sustainability. That's because the budget rider in the budget does direct us to fully fund it in the first year. So that's why that looks different, because we're following the legislative directive. But these stakeholders have been great to work with. We're very excited. Our improvement team has done a great job of modeling the office, and the stakeholders down there are very anxious to get it in place because they have a real problem with attorney shortages. They want their dockets to move, and they want to make sure that cases are handled properly. So with that, any questions?
No, I think geographically speaking too, I mean, to the east, you have Brazoria County, which is fairly well off. And then like you said, the other one on the west side of them. So the way they're situated there, I can see why a 2-county would. I'm good with it.
Yeah, and the judge definitely that was driving this conversation definitely reached out, and we've explored other partnerships, but this is what we've got, and we think we can build it out later.
Just real quick, going back to the other budget rider counties that we discussed earlier, Val Verde and Terrell counties, where the legislature directed us to establish that office. I did want to note that James McDermott at the Far West Regional Public Defender Office, he was successful in getting the legislature to add $1 million to our budget in order to support standing up that office. So just wanted to throw that out here, just so you knew.
Yeah.
In this case, however, no additional funds were appropriated, but nonetheless, happy to get this program up and running.
Yep.
All right, I will move to approve the new grant for the Wharton and Matagorda Regional Public Defender Office.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Before we move on to, let's go ahead and, yes, forgot about these guys. Next, new grant request. So the next 2 grant requests are from the Capital Area Private Defender Service. This is a nonprofit organization that their main project is serving as the contracted managed assigned counsel program for Travis County. They also host and implement the My Padilla statewide advisal program. We've acted on that in our continuing grant requests. They have provided applications for 2 new programs that they would like to take on this year. The first one is they're calling Road Mapping Mitigation in Texas. And basically, this is responding to a lot of well-documented research, if you've had the chance to peruse the actual applications, that in a lot of cases, particularly murder cases that are not non-death cases, there's not sufficient expertise, attention, awareness of what should be happening on the mitigation front. And so what CAPDS is proposing is a kind of centralized resource that would be housed in their organization that would provide consulting, training specifically on mitigation for those types of cases to attorneys who have those cases all across Texas. So it's similar to the My Padilla model, and we think a very cost-effective model, by the way, in terms of providing services, to have a centralized resource that can consult and assist people all around the state in an area that is significantly under-resourced and where there is a documented need. I want to note that this is an unusual program in several respects for us. first of all, that model is somewhat unusual for us. It's like MyPedia, but different. We're proposing it as a pilot project over 3 years that has a substantial research component. We're a professional researcher who we've known and worked with on a number of projects, and I think would help us really successfully analyze the impact of this work as part of this project. One of the things when this idea was first floated to us that we raised with the program was, we can't just rely on, we need to understand the demand better. And if you've perused the details in the full application packet, there are a lot of them. This is very well put together, but very long and application with lots of addenda. There is a survey of to kind of document that if this resource is put in place, attorneys will use it and that they want it and believe that they need it. So if you look in the full application packet that we shared with you, that survey has provided a lot of assurance that if you build it, they will come, so to speak. What else do I want to say about that?
I was just going to ask, so if the research component is a big part of the grant, is there something built in that they'll actually publish something that might be useful to the rest of the statewide community?
So the research component would include a paper. I don't know it would certainly be published in the sense that there would be
made available.
Yes, absolutely. That would definitely be part of it. And so this type of grant we would call a technical support grant as opposed to our regular improvement grants, because it's kind of it's a special deal that's piloting a new approach to providing services in the indigent defense space. And it does have a research component that in our grant rules will build the indigent defense knowledge base. So that is part of what they would do, is issue the write-up of the impact and evaluation of how it went and the impact that it had. We do have the folks on standby, particularly with this type of thing, which is novel. I thought that y'all might have questions or want to hear more, so we did make a point of inviting the program staff to be available if you would like to hear more about it, or they would do a better job than I can of providing you with a kind of overview and understanding of what the need is out there. But I defer to you, but we can bring them in.
I did want to chime in here real quick to just say that I felt like this was one of the strongest applications that I've ever seen come in the door in terms of, the write-up, the description, there were, maybe like 10 letters of support from attorneys around the state, a number of appellate attorneys talking about how, mitigation is underutilized in these kinds of cases, and how, it could help in terms of providing effective assistance of counsel. The research component that Edwin had thrown out in terms of the survey of attorneys on, whether or not they would use this, whether or not this is needed, that was also in there. So, that was another thing I was really impressed with reading this application.
I totally agree. Very, very well put together. Encourage y'all, if you're curious to learn more of the details, I don't want to pull it up because we have so much. I'm mindful of not overwhelming you with material because I know that you have a lot of things to do in your day job. But in the Appendix A that we circulated with all the application details, you can find all this stuff on page 102. That's where it starts. So there's a lot more information that we would have. But we think that this is worth, this has very positive prospects for success and definitely worth trying. I think we'll learn a lot from it. And I think that based on what we've learned from the MyPedia program, there's so much we can do by developing a central resource that really equips attorneys everywhere in areas like this. So I think that Scott and Scott has mentioned a lot about investigation being underutilized, and maybe there's some way that this type of model not in a straightforward way, since you can't necessarily be remote to do a lot of case investigation, but how to support that side of things. Maybe the centralized model might have
I
some
think
promise.
that's also something we're definitely looking at in other contexts, like judicial council and other places. For example, OCA has a remote interpreter program for uncontested matters. So it's a good idea to explore. Texas is a big state. Not every county has access to the same resources, but if you could make Harris County resources available to Far West Texas, if there are truly things that could be helpful statewide, I think we should explore those things as a state. Some things must be local, but if there's a chance to sort of have our urban resources available all over the state more, then that would be great. And I think also maybe more attorneys are willing to volunteer for things that don't involve traveling. So,
Right.
any other questions or discussion? Okay, I will move to, let me get the name of it back on the screen. Move to approve the new grant for the road mapping mitigation project from Capital Area. It says Private Defender Service.
Yes, it is a private defender. It's a private nonprofit. So
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So the term private defender came from the original Managed Assigned Counsel program is typically understood to be San Mateo County out California. They call it the private defender as a contrast to the public defender. And so our MACs, in some cases, our Managed Assigned Counsel programs have taken up that nomenclature. Thank you all for that conversation and support. We're excited. CAPDS has also come forward with another application. This is quite different, and we're not recommending this one. And we'll talk about why, but the program has received funding from a federal grant. I believe it was Bureau of Justice Assistance. I'm not exactly sure which channel through BJA, maybe, for a wrongful conviction review project, specifically for Travis County cases. It's sort of an outgrowth of the forensic project that was a big effort to take a second look at a number of cases that had as a result of some systemic forensic science breakdowns. However, the project kind of went beyond some of those specific matters related to, say, DNA processing and looked at possible wrongful convictions more broadly. So they got funding for that kind of review. That grant did not get renewed, that federal grant, and so they've come to us to see if we would be willing to come in for about $750,000 over 2 years to look at the remaining cases and kind of wind it up. Just a few things about TIDC, history in this area. As you may know, the legislature directs us in a budget rider. It's not voluntary, but not that we wouldn't do it otherwise, but to contract with the 6 public law schools in Texas every year for a couple $100,000. We contract with them to operate an innocence project in the public law schools. And so that we've been doing that for a number of years. That's not a lot of money for any particular program, but we do provide some kind of core funding for some of these law school-based clinics. A couple of those programs, the ones at A&M and Texas Tech, actually contract it out, what they do out to the Innocence Project of Texas, which is a nonprofit that's been very successful in litigating wrongful convictions in the state, has a number of exonerations under their belt. So we have funded that because the legislature channels that money to these law school-based programs. And then we have been involved in a couple of instances, TIDC has, of providing some grant funding in cases where there was a discrete systemic crisis related that sort of raised wrongful convictions concerns. One example is there was a big kind of scandal, I don't want to call it a scandal, but an issue about the way DNA mixture analyses was being processed or interpreted. FBI kind of came out with new guidance, and it turns out that there were some problems in how mixture analyses were being evaluated. So we do have an instance where we've provided some funding in the past for a second look at some of the cases that were fundamentally more analyzed under a fundamental kind of breakdown like that. There's another instance where there was a specific bad actor at the forensic science lab that was uncovered, and a number of cases needed a second look, and we stepped in and helped provide some funding for case review. But typically, we have not funded county-specific wrongful conviction reviews or innocence projects outside of those scenarios. The county, I will note that there's no matching component here. I think that maybe there's some prospect that the county itself, since this is a specific Travis County set of cases, that I don't know. I have no information about this, but the county may step in and provide some funding. There's no match offered here, no matching funds. They're asking us to pick up the full $750,000. So for those kinds of reasons, I think it's a little bit outside of TIDC's primary mission, which is to try to improve. The last thing I'll note is, regarding what's covered by the Sixth Amendment, the post-conviction challenges may not qualify as if the prosecutor hasn't become involved and counsel formally appointed in some of these cases. There's no Sixth Amendment right for post-conviction kind of investigations or things like that. And so one of the comments that all of our external reviewers offered for us was, that is an important difference, and really TIDC should probably focus its resources, which are limited, on that space in indigent defense where there's a clear Sixth Amendment right to counsel. We can make improvements to that system, and that there's probably much more bang for the TIDC buck if we focus our limited resources in those directions. None of that is to say that looking at these cases and finishing the review is not a worthy, appropriate goal, but it's probably not, I think, the best use of TIDC resources. So open it up for discussion, but that's kind of where we landed with our review.
I think I would agree with that. A single county with no county matching, and it's a county that has resources and no specific reason.
It seems like throwing spaghetti against the wall, see if they can get money to get it to stick somewhere. So, I mean, I make a motion to approve it. I know this is kind of sounding a little bit crazy, but I make a motion that we approve this.
I would not, tell me more about why you would want to approve it,
So
because
that
I would
then
not
we
be inclined to
can-
second.
Then we can vote on it and it's voted down here in committee.
Okay, all right, then, I'm not a Robert's Rules of Order expert. If it fails for the lack of a second, then that's essentially a vote of no, right?
It would die, but I think it's a little bit more of a statement to have both of us say no.
Okay.
That's
All right.
my take on it, is what
Okay,
why I'm doing this. Because I think this is just it's not in our wheelhouse. It's not something we should be looking at, especially like you said, with Travis County has resources to do it if they wanted. There's innocence projects, like Edwin said, that are out there. I mean, there's a ton of other things to go, and I don't think this is something that TIDC should be looking at.
how about I rephrase your motion like, I move that we not move forward with approval for the wrongful conviction project.
Follow me?
Right.
Achieve the same thing. I'll amend my motion to what she said, or I'll second the amended motion, and we vote on the amendment. So yes, I vote for the amendment.
All right, all in favor of the amended motion, which is denying this grant application for funding? Aye.
All right, thank you. And
But I think the way you stated your priorities all make sense to me. So we shouldn't be doing generally single urban counties that, if it were important to them, they could find resources for it, et cetera. Doesn't seem consistent with the rest of the grants that we have been funding.
Right. And, I mean, I've worked in, wrongful conviction context myself, and I appreciate it and do not intend to, through anything I said, undervalue the importance of reviewing cases where there are flags. But I think in terms of TIDC's program, I don't think we're the right place. So I thank you for the discussion, and I really think we need to look into getting a professional parliamentarian the more we go down the
For our 2-member subcommittee meeting.
Well, we'll get another member soon, but so thanks for the discussion on that. Before we go to the extraordinary item, I want to, Eric, could you pop up do you have I'm not sure if you have it, Eric, the cohort 6 for the Future Indigent Defense Leaders Program? I may not have.
I'm
sent-
not sure if I have that unless it's in the appendix.
So can you make me host and I'll share mine?
Sure.
So
Unless you just send it out in that email.
I will, one of the things I had sent to you all yesterday was, we have lots of time pressure. It's been a tricky few weeks, but we did have one more grant that I did not get in time to include with the others, which was the next grant or next cohort of the Future Indigent Defense Leaders Program. Bill, do you want to give an overview of the members while I pull up that proposal?
Certainly. Thanks, Edwin. The Future Indigent Defense Leaders is a longstanding partnership between TIDC, the Harris County Public Defender's Office, the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, TCDLA, and Gideon's Promise. With it, we train cohorts of 30 lawyers in a 2-week intensive training program, followed up by 4 long weekend follow-ups, working on trial skills, advocacy, building rapport with clients, and effectively advocating for the client's goals and their representation. The program has been incredibly successful, both in terms of helping to provide the training that new attorneys coming into public defense are seeking in areas that, frankly, they don't receive in law school, and helping to give them resiliency and staying in the work. The 6th cohort will be the 4th class that we have trained exclusively in Texas. And as we've been working on this and with our partners at Gideon's Promise and TCDLA, we've been able to significantly reduce the costs for the program by about $50,000 over the 3-year course of the program for the cohort. We wanted to get this to you and seek your approval on it, because TCDLA has been able to get some very preferential pricing for the hotel and meal costs for the first year of the program, which are part of how we're able to realize those costs and minimize the costs for the program. The other part of our 6th cohort, which is a significant change, is when we started, the goal was that we would move from using Gideon's Promise national curriculum, which was used with its first 2 classes, to truly being a Texas-based Texas training. The last 3 classes, we have had a Texas curricula taught by a combination of Texas and national faculty, which was 50-50. For our next class, we're moving to 2 Texas practitioners for every 1 member of the national faculty, which again, not only reduces the program costs, but it increases the value for the attorneys participating in it, as they're hearing from lawyers who have been in courtrooms across the state and better preparing them for their career to come in public defense.
Can I just ask if you can see my screen that I'm sharing?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so this is the application. So I think Bill explained Harris County has been the kind of organizer for grant making purposes. So we make the grant to them. And then of course there are some contracts with other partners in the program. And I want to compliment Bill, because in the last few cycles of us doing this and making it more of a Texas program, the costs have continued to come down, and our partners have really been doing a great job to make it work better. So Bill, is there a particular aspect of these pages? I mean,
The last page you're on, Edwin's probably the most significant, that lays out the costs. Again, It's a 3-year program. Harris hosts it. This is fully funded by TIDC, because while Harris is hosting it and some of their attorneys participate, it benefits attorneys across the state. They're truly just serving as our fiscal agent and then contracting with Gideon's Promise and TCDLA to make it happen.
Right.
One other item about this grant, as Edwin mentioned, we were short on time frame, and so we would be seeking your approval conditioned on Harris County formally submitting the grant application to us. They've indicated that, or Alex Boonan's indicated he supports it, will formally submit it to their commissioner's court for our grant application process. But again, we wanted to bring it before the committee and then seek the board approval so that we can lock in the pricing that we are seeing now and minimize the program costs.
All
We do
right.
have I believe, a draft motion on this. So this is a 3-year program, and like with our other grants, we award fiscal year by fiscal year. So we would be looking at funding for 2026 of $226,255.
I'll make a motion to approve the improvement grant for Harris County for the Future Indigent Defense Leaders Cohort 6 for $226,255.
I'll second. And contingent on Commissioner's Court,
Yeah.
we will, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. We just have one other grant proposal. This one is in a different category. So Eric, if you could pop back over to the board meeting materials and just pull up that application from Brewster County. This is for what we call the Extraordinary Disbursement Grant Program. And that, unlike most everything we've talked about, which is forward funding work that's going to happen in the future, we do have a grant program called the Extraordinary Disbursement Grant for a county that has incurred an unexpectedly high indigent defense costs that have caused a financial hardship for the county. And this is one of those requests from Brewster County. Most of the time that we see these cases, they are death penalty cases where either the program, now that we have the Regional Public Defender for capital cases, sometimes even those expert costs that are not included as part of what that program covers can be very difficult for counties to cope with. And so we often see these requests in the context of death penalty litigation. In this case, this wasn't a death case, but a particular case where the voucher was $39,651 for Brewster County, which has an entire non-PD indigent defense budget that is basically equal to that number for their whole year. And this just kind of blindsided them. So as we've discussed, Brewster County, of course, is in the Big Bend region. Alpine is the county seat and is served by our 5-county Far West Regional Public Defender Program. This particular case could not be represented by that PD because of a conflict of interest and the co-defendant, I assume. And so they had to appoint, the district court had to appoint private counsel. The case had quite a long lifespan, and as the county judge explains in his letter, was presented with a bill quite long after the resolution of the case. Wasn't really kind of looped in on what was coming, and they were just really put in a difficult spot. So we think that Eric, if you want to just scroll down to the Judge Hennington's letter, I think it's helpful. When we get these, we always get the backup. I didn't burden you with all the supporting next letter. Yeah. So we've reviewed all the vouchers and the details, and we have confirmed the expense. But we do think it's appropriate for TADC to provide some help under this program because they were kind of blindsided on the budget front and didn't really have any choice because the PD was unable to be involved in this case. So we do have a recommendation for a extraordinary disbursement grant. The amount is $39,651 for Brewster County to offset the incurred expense in this case. Happy to answer questions. We also have Mr. McDermott, I believe, is probably still on the line if y'all had questions that might be specific to the.
I did review this one in its complete form as it was sent to us. I understand once the district judge approves payment, there's nothing anyone can do about the amount of it. So I understand. I do know that these problems come up. I was going to ask, not relevant to this specific invoice, but I know when we were doing our plans in Collin County, we try to put like time limits on when you have to turn in your reimbursement and things like that. Are those allowed to be part of counties' plans?
That's a great question. Let me defer to Scott and Bill on that because they understand the law on that matter much better than I do. I mean, I think it certainly presents a problem, and as a practical matter, I can say that many counties have implemented such deadlines.
Justice Miskell, the Code of Criminal Procedure doesn't speak to deadlines on it. However, as Edwin indicated, they are commonly part of the indigent defense plans for counties to address exactly this type of issue, to at least give some predictability. The other part that sort of adds to the challenge, as you pointed out, is that the Code of Criminal Procedure does require the county to pay once it is approved by the judge hearing the case.
Okay. So I know that there's nothing at this point that Brewster County can do about this one. They have to pay it. So I am going to move that we do pay it. I was just wondering if there's an education opportunity as far as guidance for plans to help it not happen in the future.
That's a great point. I mean, we can certainly talk to the county judge and the other stakeholders about building some kind of language like that into the plan. I will say that, you know, aside from even the timing or the surprise element of the surprise billing we've been hearing about, the amount of the voucher in the context of the county's available resources and indigent defense budget may even independently mean that even if they could see it coming a year in advance, that it's really asking a lot for them. And so
One of our things that we had done for our CPS appointed counsel that helped prevent these type of surprises that we were formerly getting a lot of, like one invoice submitted long after the case was over for an exceptionally high amount compared to similar cases, as we started requiring the invoices to be submitted at different phases along the way, so that if the first invoice was too high, that the district judge could have a conversation about.
Yeah.
And I know every case is different, and I'm not, commenting on that. I'm just saying sometimes there are things that can be done to prevent things from snowballing or catching people by surprise.
I think that's a great point, and I will certainly talk with, this is something we can pull Wesley Shackelford in on in terms of some suggested plan language on interim billing for certain kinds of cases over a particular amount. I mean, we're not in a position.
Or especially like you could even do it just for cases where the public defender's conflicted, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if that's the area that has the potential more devastating impact, then
Right.
those few cases could have more oversight.
The timing's actually ideal. We are working on the updates for the data website and how counties will enter their indigent defense plans, so we can add some additional model language around this on both interim billings and timeframes for submission of vouchers.
And certainly if counties have flat fee billing, or if it's, already covered by, you don't have to increase the administrative hoops for everyone, but just on these few privately appointed cases that might escape the usual best practices or whatever it might be.
A great suggestion. Thank you, Justice Miskell.
It's a problem that happens in every county. It's just probably exacerbated when that, like you said, is the entire defense budget for the whole year.
Well, but he says that, but he says it's 90. I mean, they originally budgeted 40. Counties had that. I mean, they're allocating well over half of what they're contributing to the PDO to cover these co-defendant cases. I mean, what's his temperature on this? Has anyone talked to Judge Hennington? Like, is he upset?
He's very he's upset, and and I think
well, is he upset that the PDO is not representing these other ones and they're paying money for it? Or is he just upset with these bills that are coming in for these and they're double tapped for indigent defense?
I think he understands the rules about conflicts of interest. I mean, we could bring the defender and Chief Defender James McDermott, I believe, is still on the line, who could speak to this. But my understanding is his main issue is, he's dealing with a budget in a small county that just doesn't have a lot of wiggle room. And if he's got his PD contribution, which for him, and he's told me this a number of times, is a big lift for his piece of the regional PD, even after we come in and step in. And then he's got the remainder of his indigent defense budget for all the other indigent defense stuff that the PD can't handle. And, you know, it's when he gets one of these, it's just like, how am I supposed to cope? So there's the timing issue, and I really appreciate the conversation about that. And then there's just the magnitude of in the context of very small county budgets, where to the extent that we have
Brewster County is the largest county in the state.
I'm sure he'd love to have that conversation with you. But Judge Hennington has been on the bench for a few years now. He wasn't part of the original group that started the Far West, but he's been he was on the oversight board. He's been supportive of the program and all the benefits it's afforded the region, and he's been a good partner with us. And the other thing I didn't mention, for your context, when we budget every year, we typically set aside about 200,000 or more for these types of requests that come in. And we certainly have, we haven't drawn that this year. So to the extent that just looking at what we have available for helping in these extraordinary requests, the budget is there. So.
All right, I will move to approve the, how are you calling it? The emergency extraordinary disbursement grant to Brewster County that's set forth in the materials.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Well, I think that's all the motions, and I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. I want to thank you all. What we will do, we're finalizing the materials for the full board meeting, and what we will do is, since we have a number of committee motions, and I want to thank you all for all your time and effort working through all this with us, is communicate that we have committee motions. One thing just procedurally is, if we have a committee motion in the full board meeting, it doesn't require a second, just procedurally. And so when we create the materials for the full commission, we will note that we have committee motions that you all have adopted. And, I'm sure some members will like to, jump into some of this, may have some questions, and we can pull it up. But your work in this committee helps us to be more efficient with the overall board. So I want to thank you for working through it with us. And anything else closing remarks wise?
No, I'm glad to be on board, and I think this is really important work, and so I'm happy to have the opportunity to be helpful.
Me too, and I'm sorry I won't see y'all next Friday.
Well, I am too, but I appreciate both of y'all, and thank you so much for everything.